During the pinup, we talked about why AutoCAD is part of the curriculum here. While a powerful drafting tool, it's not that well suited out of the box to the pure design part of interior design. And actually, for that reason, when we had only one semester of CAD instruction, in 2007, I moved the curriculum entirely from AutoCAD to Revit to better prepare students for careers as designers rather than as drafters. Within 2 or 3 years, though, local employers and alumni got back to us to say that our graduates really needed to know how to use AutoCAD. So we added a semester to the CAD courses, one for AutoCAD and one for Revit. Even if you never draw a complete project in AutoCAD in your career, you will always be dealing with it and the concepts it is based on. It's still in daily use all over the world, and there's a vast number of legacy AutoCAD drawings, like all of U of L's facilities drawings, all the Navy's drawings, and those of every property management company in the world. Many times I've been asked, as you almost certainly will be, to revise or update such drawings, so you need to know how they're put together and how they work. And you will certainly be expected to be able to use them as a starting point for new work in whatever application you are using by then. Additionally, AutoCAD can be greatly enhanced by programming, and any number of software developers provide third-party applications that run on top of AutoCAD, providing thousands of 2D and 3D FF and E blocks, plus the ability to report them in schedules and cost estimates. So far, you have had some experience with using AutoCAD to draft floor plans and more detailed objects, and to a lesser extent dimensions. Today, we will address the nettlesome problem of getting text and dimensions to be of consistent height across viewports plotted at different scales. Nettlesome because AutoCAD provides 3 distinct ways of doing this, and they don't play well together. Updating an existing plan in AutoCAD, consistent with how it was originally drawn, means understanding these 3 ways and knowing how to work with the one being used. I hope by today, every question we have about text and dimensions is settled. What I want to show is 3 different ways that AutoCAD has so that the dimensions and text show up the exact same legible size in a floor plan, in large plans and details, casework dimensions. So it's all consistent and clean, and nobody's having to switch back and forth from different point sizes. And that applies to the people looking at the drawings as well as to us that are making them. The initial way AutoCAD came with, back when I learned it, was just what we've been doing here. If you wanted your text in a drawing to come out the same thickness as the wall, you made it 6 inches high. And if you changed the scale of that drawing, all of a sudden it was a different size on the plotted page. So to do that, you need a dimension style for each scale you were going to be drawing at. Say 1 for 1/4 inch, 1 for 3/4 inch, and 1 for 1.5 inches or something or other. Until you've laid out your sheet, however, you don't really know the scale of any particular view. You might think I'm going to do it at 1/2 inch equals a foot, and you put in all this text that's just the right size, and then you realize, oh, I've got room on this page for 1 inch equals a foot, and you put it in there, and all the text gets like twice as tall on the page, and that's really a pain to keep track of. So the original idea was you have fixed height text in model space. Let's say 6 inch height in model space. The next way, I forget how long this was, 15 or 20 years, they came up with the idea of an annotative text, also in model space. But that is a text style that is aware of the scale of the view that it's in. And if the scale changes on the plot sheet, then the text adjusts its height to remain the same plotted height. The last one, which is what I've started using, fixed height text and dimensions, all 1/8 of an inch tall, all in paperspace. Because then I just have one text height for everything, which is to say one text style. Notes, dimensions, regardless of the scale of the drawing. We'll also be looking at text with leaders. They will also fall into this same text thing. I want to look at each of these 3 in turn and understand how they work. I'm going to set up 2 different views here. I want to select that. I want to change its display lock to none. I'm going to change its standard scale back down to 1/4 inch equals a foot. Okay, so that's a little guy, and this is a big guy. We want to see what happens if we put a piece of text in there, and what happens to that. If I make it 6 inches high over here, what happens over here? So this is the existing drawing, and this is the new version. I'll go back to do it here so we can really understand what's happening. I'm just going to put this on layer 0. Let's do style. I'm just going to say Arial text. We'll make it 6 inches high because that's sort of the number that we know. So it's not annotative. It doesn't change the size. We're going to set that to be current and close. And then I'll just use the text command. Oh, okay. Start point, F8, horizontal. And there it's asking me for the text itself. This is 6 inch high text, enter, enter. Okay, if you remember that this is not annotative text. So when we go back into the layout, we can see that it's 6 inches high in each drawing, but 6 inches is different because the scale of the viewports is different. To work this way, if I wanted to have extra text in here that was the same size as that, I would need to make a new text style that's 3 inches high that would be proportionally half as tall and continue through. And when you start working with multiple scales, you have to keep track of the text styles, their associated dimension styles, and you got to give them names that you can remember and that make sense. It becomes a stage management issue of keeping all that stuff straight. You might think you could just change the height of the larger piece of text. What if I pick that piece of text and I don't want it 6 inches high, I just want it 3 inches high? Maybe I'll fool it. Well, it's the same piece of text, so it shrinks in that one as well. It's just not going to work. Or I could have separate layers for the 3-inch text and the 6-inch text and turn them back and forth. And it's all more of a hassle than anybody wants to deal with. Certainly that I want to deal with, especially since Revit has shown me the way, and I'm trying to make AutoCAD behave as much like Revit as I can. So that's the issue with fixed height text placed in model space. The nice thing about this kind of text, since it's not changing height relative to drawing objects, is if it's just a tiny bit below the circles here, it's going to be just a tiny bit below the circles here. So you can at least depend on that much. So it stays put, and it doesn't expand or contract relative to the objects near it. Annotative text gets relatively bigger as the scale gets smaller, and it can cover up something that was right next to it. In any big firm, there'll be some CAD manager who will figure out this is how we're going to do this and puts that in their template and they use it, but it's still a pain to deal with. You might not know ahead of time at what scale you're going to plot a particular view. Therefore, you sort of can't pick a style to start using. If you do assume a given scale and create a lot of text and dimensions in model space accordingly, and then you need to change the scale of that because the boss says, I just need more room in there to be able to see things more clearly, or I need to make it smaller to fit something else on the page, then you have to rescale all those text and dimensions, and that's just no fun at all. Annotative text, let's look at that. Let me go back to model space. I'll leave that guy there. Let me edit that. 6 inch high, 6 inch high fixed height text, just to make it clear. So if we take an annotative style, I keep wanting to pan over here to see other image, but this is all the same file. If we use an annotative text style, as we go from the 1/4 inch to the 1/2 inch, and the whole image gets bigger, the text will be shrunk proportionally to stay the same height. So let's just see how that works. So let's go to style. And I'm going to pick the annotative text style. And for annotative, we don't tell it how high we want it to be relative to building objects. For that, we give it, you can see this changes over here from height in drawing units to plotted height. And let's say we want to make that an 1/8 of an inch. And not change anything else. So that's a text style called annotative. So we'll start with making some text that way and then do some dimension text with it. So if we do text, style is annotative. Text height is 6 inches. Annotative, yes, justify left. So we'll put this down here. And again, it's asking for a rotation angle. I'll just click 90 degrees. And it's giving me the little blinker. And we'll say, this is 1/8 inch high annotative text. That's almost spelled right. There we go. Annotative text. And we're done. So now we'll go back to layout. It hasn't done it. Welcome to my world. These guys are supposed to be the same height. Now let's just see why they're not, because we run into this. So 1/8 inch high annotative text. Let's just check something. These two are the same object. This is supposed to be showing up instead of this eye. It's supposed to be just the same height as these guys. So the trick here is that the viewport needs to know what scale it is. We have to have assigned the viewport, the scale to the viewport. So let's see if that's been done. So here's this. Aha, and here's the problem, is that this viewport, which actually we're displaying the geometry at 1/2 inch equals a foot, it still thinks for some reason that its annotative things are being scaled at 1/4 inch. And I think this is sorts of no end of confusion that can happen. But basically you want these to be the same all the time. So let's do display locked, no. And then we can change the annotative scale to, what was this? 1/2 inch equals,
this was a 1/4 inch and this
was a 1/2, I think. 1/2 inch equals a foot. Okay. And now that has disappeared. What happens is, right now, this piece of text, which actually is here, is only, I'll lock it, thank you. This piece of text only has one plotting scale associated with it. So it's good when the annotation scale is 1/4 inch equals a foot. It's not defined when
the annotation scale is a 1/2 inch equals a foot.
But if we click in here and pick this object and right click and deal with its annotative object scale. Isn't this fun? Aren't you having a great time? We can add or delete scales, and that means we can tell it which viewports to show up in. So if we add 1/2 inch equals a foot to that, okay, then it shows up down here the same plotted height as up here. I had to add the idea of plot me in viewports that are 1/2 inch equals a foot to that piece of text object.
Since that piece of text was created in modelspace, where the current annotation scale was a 1/4 inch equals a foot, it inherited that scale.
Well, it is here. It probably wouldn't have showed up here because this, yeah, it would have showed up here because the viewport here that we were drawing in is a 1/4 inch equals a foot. That's how I could, sort of create it to start. But you can see this is, you change scale and just things disappear. So tell you the truth, if I were given those Schneider Hall drawings and asked to update them and give them back to university facilities, wherever that was, in that same format, I probably wouldn't create any of these. If I needed a dimension, I'd copy a dimension and move its points to where it needed to go. If I had a piece of text, I would take a piece of text that was there and move it where it needed to be and just edit that. The way that Revit works, if we have a title block like this and a view here that's at, let's say it's a detail like 3/4 inch, and another detail of something else at 1/4 inch, like a plan, you actually do the dimensions
on top of the view on the title block.
AutoCAD as well is smart enough to realize those 2 points are 3 feet apart. So when you dimension out here in paperspace and click to that endpoint and click to that endpoint, it'll say 3 feet 0 inches. So the dimension can drill down through to pick up the geometry that it's looking at. And that would be at whatever height you decided.
The same text style
that's read by the dimension styles can also be used for the notes, and that will have that same height, whatever that happens to be. So one text style, one dimension style covers all the bases. So let me show you what that looks like. So this will be a fixed height, let's say an 1/8 of an inch high style. We're going to call it, just going to call it notes, and use that style for everything, for text, for dimensions, for things with leaders on them, the whole gamut. This is the number 3. Yes, fixed height text placed in paperspace. So first we set up the text style and then refer to that in the dimension style. I'm going to make a new, we'll base it on, and we're going to call this, actually I'm going to call the, you can't use like slashes and stuff or inch marks. So 1-8 means 1/8 inch. Fixed. Something like that, 1/8 of an inch high, fixed. And it's not annotative. Its height is 1/8 of an inch. Let's make its width factor like 0.8 or something, just because it's nice to fit more text into a given space. We'll set that current. Current text style has been modified. Yes, that's current. Close. Now I'll set up a dimension style that uses that as its text style. Fortunately, you only have to do this once, and you should be good for the rest of your life. But we have to do this one time anyhow. Okay, we're going to make a new dimension style, and we're going to call that. We're also going to call that 1/8 inch fixed, just so we make that connection. 1/8 inch fixed. Start with standard. Continue. Now we got to set this thing all up. Let's go to text first of all. For its text style, we'll be using that 1/8 inch fixed. Units will be architectural. Nearest 1/8 of an inch is good enough for that. So let me see what it's starting to look like. Let's go back to text. I want it aligned with the dimension line. So these read vertically. I want it vertically. I want them above the line. I want my fraction format not stacked. I want my symbols and arrows. I want an architectural tick. And one reason I like working this way is that all the dimensions I'm giving are the actual sizes that things will appear once they're plotted. All right, that's good enough to start with. Okay, and 1/8 inch fixed will set current. Close. So I can now dimension model space distances from paperspace and have that a consistent size without depending on the scale of the drawing. So we'll use dimension. I'll use the linear dimension from there to there and up. And there we go, 30 feet, 0 inches. And if we use the distance command and see from here up to here, we can see that's an 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch high. Now I need to fix this so I actually see those inch marks. So dedim, modify units. It's set to save space if there's no inches on there, not to show the inches. I usually say, always show me the inches. If there's no feet, you can get rid of the feet. I don't need to see 0 feet, 9 inches. I just want to see the 9 inches. So, okay, close. So that goes back to 30 feet, 0. One thing to pay attention to here is that you have to select points on an object in model space for this to work. Otherwise, go back to our linear dimension again. If I'm just measuring, let's say from here to here, so I mean, that's 2¼ inches, which is where it is out here and out here on the sheet, but not in the object itself. Let's see how those other dimensions work. I'm still out here in let's make sure about this. Dim, linear, snap, snap,
30 feet.
So we see that those two are the same height, and we've got a good consistency here. Other dimensions, like let's do diameter. I pick that, and if we go into that view, I'm in there. We can see that is the diameter 1 foot 5 1/8 and 1 foot 5 1/8 right here. So it really does drill down and get you there. Let's do a little piece of text just to see how that works. So we'll use multi-line text, where it's asking me for a corner. Oh, I'm still in that view is still active. I need to come back out here, double click out here, and then I can do the M text. That I hope is 1/8 inch high when finished. And then hitting enter with this stuff gives you a line feed, but there we do that, and we can see that's the same as that. And then something I mentioned earlier was
creating text with leaders.
First, I need to set up a leader style that's going to match M leader. This is the one I want to use. I'm going to manage these. I'm going to create a new style for these guys that matches that. New. We'll call this also 1/8 inch fixed. Continue. We'll start with content. We want it to be we don't want it to be M text. We want it to use that text style. I think everything else I'm just going to pretty much keep the same leader format. Use an arrow, leader structure. We can ignore all that kind of stuff. Okay, close. So now when I do, the command is, well, it's up here, multileader.
The command is mleader or MLD for shortcut.
I can put this here and say, this is a ULT leader. Well, apparently I didn't. MLD. Oh, click out. There you go. And we see that's the same height. So now we have everything, all the annotation in the drawing stemming from the
same single text style. So now you can create single line text, multi-line text, multi-leaders, and dimensions, and they'll all be beautifully consistent from one page to another and even one project to another.
Julianne, if you're thinking of getting those dimensions to work when you're working on something very small, let's just say I have something very tiny. And I wanted to dimension this usefully to show somebody. I can go back into a layout. So there it is over there. We'll close this down and do M view. I'm going to enlarge this up quite large. I'm going to double click inside here, do zoom on that, go back to paperspace, zoom out. There's that nice thing. We'll give this a scale just for reference purposes. I don't know what that is. Let's say it's going to be big, like 3 inch equals a foot, even bigger. Full size, a foot equals a foot. Then we'll lock that. Let's see, lock that. Yes. Okay. And then the same thing. Dimension, linear. Got to snap to them. Inch and 3/8. So actually, you could just draw it here if you wanted to. I mean, just make this big enough, and have that down some small enough size. And there was some other weird things happening near it that we didn't want to mention. We come back here, drag this in right to the object. And don't forget that we're gonna end up turning this. This is not going to end up plotting on the sheet because we're going to put that frame on the def points layer. So it won't even plot. And then you'll just see dimensions wherever they might want to be. I commend this approach to you. I think it's the cleanest and simplest. A couple of little drawbacks that you have to bear in mind. Advantages, one size fits all. Disadvantages, we need a layout to put the view and the dimension in. A couple of things like room names that might need to show up in several different views must be copied from one view to another. That's Control-C and Control-V, it's not hard. It's a little trickier if let's say a room name like dining room is in 5 separate plans, and you decide to, there is separate pieces of text in separate views. If you decide to change it to D period, R period, you need to change it in all 5 of those.
You can use the find command to find and replace through the whole drawing to expedite that process.
And you have to be careful when you're moving a view around on a sheet that you take everything with it, all the annotation with it that refers to objects inside that view. So for instance, let's just see what happens. Let's try changing some scales first of all. See how this works. If I select this, if you select the view, you can move it around with the just the grip here. Let's see what happens. Okay, they go. Let's move that out of the way. Let's try moving that and see if this piece of text goes with it. The connect point goes, where the text is does not. Let's see what see what happens. I don't know. I've never tried this before. Okay, there's that, and let's just see. No, it looks like this anchor point is out there in paperspace. It's not. This guy is linked to the model because I snapped to that endpoint. Control-Z. So to move them all together, I want to go move, window, grab, like that. Here's a question. What happens when I change the scale of this? You know, we've been talking about changing scale this time. How's this all going to work? I'll change this from 1/2 inch down to 1/4 inch. Okay, well, their dimension travels along, adjusts its size. It's pretty nice. And you can see my annotative text did change to stay the same size as all that. It's going to take a little getting used to I mean, I think of dimensions as sort of in my model. I think of my dimensions as over here. But one thing is really nice about having them outside here. By the time you started creating in model space, a set of dimensions for the electrician and a set of dimensions for the carpenter and a set of dimensions for the plumber and a set of dimensions for the cabinet guy and a set of dimensions for the people placing the furniture. In model space, you would have lots of dimensions here, also sort of stacked on top of each other and in different layers because they're going to different people on different sheets. Whereas if we're doing it this way, on the electrician sheet, we have the dimensions he needs and only them. On the carpenter sheet is the dimensions he needs and only them. So for the exercise, let's do the house plan with layouts. That was that kitchen plan. And why don't we do this together and see how it works? See if what I've been telling you is useful. It's only one text style and one dimension style we need to set up. So let's do that. The one we do first is the text style. So let's do new 1-8 inch fixed. Not annotative. Annotatives turn on and off and get bigger and smaller. I don't want to deal with them at all. So this is, we'll say 1/8 inch fixed. We do not want annotative. For this regular, I started this with, I was copying room names, so it ended up being bold, but I don't really want that. So I want 1/8 inch fixed, Arial or whichever font you want. Regular, we don't need italics and stuff. Not annotative. And remember, this is going to be 1/8 of an inch high. Out here in paperspace on the sheet. And some nominally smaller width factor, about 0.9. Apply. Oh, and set current. The only time we're ever going to need other fonts might be for the big ones on a title page. I've found in terms of fonts, engineers like to have like Courier or one of those monospaced fonts. They look kind of clunky to me. Let's take a 5-minute break. So we made the text style, and now we're going to create a dim style using that one. And right now we have only an annotative one. We're going to need to make a new one. And we can, so we'll just call this the same thing, 1-8 inch fixed, 1/8 inch fixed. No question about the thing. We will uncheck the annotative. Start with annotative, means it's going to pick up its tick marks and that kind of stuff, which I think is going to be fine. But we don't want it to be annotative. Yeah, and that, yes, and then continue. So you can see what we're sort of getting here. Let's go to units. Architectural 1/8 inch not stacked. That's what we had. Suppress feet, but don't suppress inches if 0. I think, let's see, symbols and arrows, architectural tick. Well, let's just see how these look by the time we get, let's just say okay. And we'll select it, make it current for sure, and close. So if we use it here, it's going to be little teeny tiny text that we won't even be able to see. So we're going to go out to one of our layouts. And the only trick to using it here is we have to snap the cursor to some part of an object. It's good. It's good. Oh, snap! Yeah, boy, that'd be a great AutoCAD blog title or something, brother. Oh, was that like in Grabowski? It'll be there next time. Let's do something real easy right now. Let's just come in and dimension this counter, length and width. So I'm going to go to my home, linear, do a linear dimension. And need to be sort of careful what we're picking, because we could pick, I want to pick all the way over here, not this guy. And my O-snaps are turned on. So there's that one. We'll pan over to here. And up it goes, 6, 2 1/8. Now, one thing I did see is because def points was the most recent layer I used, I need to stick this on a, do we have a, we don't actually have a dimension there, do we? Oh, okay, great, yeah, for the time being. We don't have to worry about getting the electrician's dimensions and the plumber's dimensions confused, because they're each going to have their own sheet with their own dimensions on it. I don't actually like that color for ADIMS. ADIMS.
If we need to see more columns, we can scroll down here.
ADIMS. Yeah, it's, who knows where this came from. Oh, yeah, it's probably because it was one of these was current when I made that layer. But we go to ADIMS and make them, I don't know, blue-green, just for sake of this distinction.
Let's perform a little test on this dimension.
I want to drag this dimension itself like out of the space, just to make clear that it really is a paper space object, not in the model space.
How do you tell if it's a paper space dimension?
Well, let me get rid of this guy.
Okay.
Okay, if I were making it in model space, that would mean I would have to like double click in there to make this active. But we're creating these dimensions out here on the sheet, not inside the view. They're sort of drilling down to find those points, but the actual dimension is out here in annotation space, if you like. So we want to double click. We don't want this to be active. Okay, well, you know, when we do this linear command, okay, well, this is what we want. Yeah, point to point. And then hit enter again. And here we want to measure, I'm measuring down the side from there to there and go out. And where those extra 1/8 of an inch crept in, I couldn't tell you.
Here's a useful thing to know about AutoCAD dimensions.
Let me see, I actually didn't move this, I can move that dimension, ladies. Dimensions in Revit are attached to an object, but in AutoCAD,
You can move a dimension away from an object.
so you want to be careful that you don't jostle them. Oh, this is interesting. I hadn't noticed this. When I move that, look at this. I'm getting a little exclamation point, which says reassociate or delete. It realizes it was moved away from something. Did you guys give that a shot? I'll say reassociate. Oh, and then I guess I have to pick. So this guy needs to go to here. And this guy needs to go to here. Whoa, that's entirely new to me. I've seen it, but I never figure out what to do with it. So that's good. That's a nice feature. So there's that. And let's just go back into model space to realize that those are not, they're not here, those dimensions. They are only out there entirely on the layout. You know, this was the view that was going to the client, the furniture plan. They want to know how big is my counter and that kind of stuff. We can tell them that. While we're at, there's a nice dimensioning option. If we want to get, which I think we looked at, if we want to get a string of dimensions going across here, we can do dim dimension, and then up at the top, you see there's C for continue. So if I want to continue this dimension across, dimension string, I can pick this, and then it will snap to these guys until I escape out into space. And I can do the same thing down this way. Dim C for continue, or you can click on it. I want to continue that one to here and to there and escape. So that would be nice for them to know how much room they have to get to the TV room. If somebody's cooking on the stove, is that enough room for somebody to work at the sink? And actually, that really should have been about 4 feet, but we felt we just didn't have it. So went for 3.6. So now we've told the client what they're getting. Let's go see what the carpenter needs to know on layout 2. You notice escape shows up a bunch. That's just sort of a general way of you deal in AutoCAD with maybe there's something active, maybe there's not. Escape will just get me out and I can go back and do whatever I want. So if we look at this closet, you can see I'm going to change the color. This is basically the yellow is the plaster or the drywall, the line of that. I'm going to change that to be something a little more. That's the A wall GWB line, gypsum wallboard. And I'm going to make the color of that something a bit darker so I can tell what's going on, see it better. And something I would suggest is just decide whether you like working on a light background or a dark background, and just decide this is what I'm going to do, and then make your color choices accordingly, because light ones don't show up obviously on this one and dark ones don't show up on a dark background. And you might think, okay, I'll put my background color in the middle, I'll make it a medium gray, and then a lot doesn't show up. So telling a carpenter what to do. So for something more specific, if we're looking at this closet up here, we got to tell the carpenter where to build things. He doesn't really, you have a choice, and you would say in the general notes that you're going to give distances, framing dimensions, either from stud to stud or from finished face to finished face. Let's do finished face to finished face, and then he will have to subtract the ½ inch or add the ½ inch, whatever is that. So I want to measure from here to here, and then from here down to there. So a way to make sure that you're outside and not dimensioning in model space is you can just type PS for paper space, and now I know that I'm outside. It might be hard to double click, you're zoomed in too far. So go to dimension, here to here. It does look small, but this is a big sheet. And if we go in here and do a line there, offset. Yeah, close enough. Yeah, I mean, the sheets are this big. So I think by the same token, I would, the only trick is like exactly how we're going to do that wall. But let's do linear. I do that, and then I think I'll do it this way. I'll give 2 dimensions here. And to move a piece of dimension text to get out of the way of something, you select it and just move it with its grip. And that really is all we need. They know this is all made out of 2x4, so we don't really have to dimension the thickness of the wall there.
The hatch is there because
that's a new wall. I just wanted to call attention to it. And you would typically have add on your drawing sheet
wall legend,
existing to remain, demo, new construction, and you're just telling people exactly what that represents. It could be that in a given project, this kind of hatch pattern means it's a 2-hour rated wall, and they have to seal it at the top and the bottom. And this means 4-hour. I mean, it just depends on the project. What you need to show. If it's just residential construction where you're not concerned with fire ratings and stuff like that, as a rule, this would be the normal way to do that. But it would be nice to say that I want the door centered
in the closet.
I don't want to have to give them a whole lot of picky dimensions. So what I might just do is we know the door width already.
From the door schedule.
Door number 4 already has a width that's specified in there. So we might just set up two dimensions, and we're just going to say for them equal. I don't know what they are. I mean, 7 3/8. I don't know. I just like them to be the same. So for that, remember when I told you that you could override a dimension, make it say anything you want? We can also make it say EQ. So let's just do that. Dimension. I'll just go from here to here, and from here to here. How do I do that? Double click. Just double click it and type EQ. There's another kind of dimension we put in where we might not know something exactly, how things are going to fit into a given space. Either it's some demolition hasn't been done that we don't know where things are exactly. But let's say we weren't going to give them this dimension. We just wanted to make sure that from here to here was it's a 3-foot fridge or something, so 3 foot 1.5 inches. I'm just making that up. We want to tell the people, make sure you've got at least 3 feet, 36.5 inches. So there, I dimension it as before. Okay, 210.5. Well, whatever that is, probably a 2/8 fridge. If we draw it the way we're pretty sure it needs to be, we might edit this, and you can either type ED and select it or just double click it. And I want to say verify. And then if you put 2 angly brackets like that, it'll insert the number. Well, I'll show you what that looks like. Verify 2 foot 10 inch minimum. So there are indeed times when you want to edit that dimension string, that dimension text. But I would say, well, here's something about the legality of drawings. The dimension given overrides what it might scale at. So if I drew it at 2/8 and he built it at 2/8, but I dimensioned it 2 foot 10, they'd have to knock it down and do it again. So a picture is worth 1,000 words, but the words are what are the contract for getting stuff built. Doors and windows are typically dimensioned to their centers, these guys. So I'd have a note saying dimensions are from finished face. In this case, if it was to studs, I'd pick back here. Carpenters like that because when they're building, there's no drywall on the walls. They're actually dealing with the studs, but I'm going to stick with this for consistency here. And so we come in and snap to the, how do I find the center of this? That's a midpoint. Shift right click, midpoint, right there. And then I could do since I see that I have a string of these, I might change to make midpoint one of my running object snaps. So if I go back to do some dimensioning, it will find that midpoint, I should have done a continued dimension string. Find that midpoint.
And with that,
I'm done. More than willing to answer questions. You know, editing this video, I bet I go to sleep 3 times. I'll try to hit all the highlights.